Times may have changed, but still, we continue to see the possibilities and dream of a new beginning, a better way of life. We do what we can to keep ourselves safe, healthy, and thriving in the new normal. And with these new challenges, when businesses and citizens need their financial transactions to be more convenient, safe, and secure, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is ready to implement the new national QR standard for merchants to accept payments. A necessity in the new normal, digital payments are now easier and more convenient to use for both consumers and businesses. QRPH streamlines the process for merchants to accept payments with just one QR code. Consumers pay for transactions using their preferred banks or e-wallet apps. And merchants are able to accept them without having to use multiple QR codes or integrate with many devices and systems. Our dream of a better life only grows stronger. And with the BSP's national QR standards for retail payments, we can continue to empower Filipinos, give them easy and better access to services and products, and ensure safe, secure, and more convenient transactions. The QRPH, one national standard for QR payments for one strong digital nation.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BusinessWorld and Maya's special BusinessWorld Insights with the theme BSP's QRPH, Accelerating Digital Adoption with the National QR Standard for Person-to-Merchant Payments. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Danny Laurel. I'm a news anchor at One News, and I will be your host and moderator. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about QRPH. This is a matrix barcode that can allow consumers, regardless of their banks, regardless of the e-wallets, to be able to pay instantly. Now, the mandated rollout of QRPH this year is expected to transform the way we pay merchants, whether they are sari stores or a department store. Now, if you have just one QR code to accept payments, for different banks, different e-wallets, as we saw on the video earlier on, what a game changer this could be. Now, for this session, we have invited high-profile speakers from the government, from business sectors to share with you, entrepreneurs and merchants, why QRPH is so important and beneficial to your businesses. This session of Business World Insights is co-presented by Maya with partners Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Franchise Association, Negosyo, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Makati Business Club, and the Philippine Retailers Association, and of course, our media partner, the Philippine STAR. Welcoming us this morning is a pioneer in the Philippines' digital landscape and of course, a key figure in the business and tech startup communities. In January of 2013, he founded Voyager Innovations, the country's leading technology company. Voyager's fintech arm, PayMaya, and of course its digital banking arm, Maya Bank, are building the Philippines' all-in-one money platform called Maya. Let's all please welcome Mr. Orlando B. Vea.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Thank you for joining us today at this webinar. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, DG Mert, ASEC Jean, Jopin, Dino, for taking the time to be with us today. Indeed, we've come a long way when it comes to digital payments and financial services, with the pandemic playing the part of the great catalyst. Financial account ownership was at 52% of adult population in 2020 compared to 23% in 2017. This figure is definitely higher now. We're way past the tipping point. Consumers have embraced digital payments as the safer and more convenient way to transact. And with the economy further opening up, digital is not just for online. More and more physical establishments are accepting digital payments. And the good news is that the push for digital payments acceleration is uniting players across the board. So from the financial services industry, our national and local government agencies, the enterprise sectors, and more. We are fortunate to have a progressive regulator like the BSP actively pushing for digital payments. I'm sure DG Mert we'll hear more from DG Mert later on that. Maya, for its part, has created the most extensive digital payments acceptance network in the country. Negosyo has been championing digitalization for MSMEs as the de facto transformation partner of government in that segment. And incoming or going forward, incoming DTI Secretary Fred Pascual has declared his priority thrust to promote MSMEs and e-commerce. Digital, including payments technology, is similarly high in the agenda of the incoming cabinet members and officials. So all these efforts will help achieve the country's goals of converting 50% of the total volume of retail payments into digital mode and expanding the financially included to 70% of Filipino adults. That's why the topic of our webinar today is very, very timely. We know that payment services are the gateway of most Filipinos to the formal financial system. Promoting QR, PH, person-to-merchant payments will surely accelerate digital payments adoption because we transact with merchants daily. So the next time you see a QRPH standee, remember, it's not just a QR code. It's part of our financial footprint as a digital and progressive nation. Maraming salamat and enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, Sir Doy. Of course, as he mentioned, it's not just about the convenience of digital payments. There's a bigger story to be told here, and that is, of course, financial inclusion. How do we get these people who are using these devices as part of the formal economy? And we will be touching upon that later on during this session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when the Philippine Payments Management Incorporated, under the guidance of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, launched the QRPH, or what we call the National QR Code Standard, the country made one of its biggest leaps towards becoming a more financially inclusive and cash-lite society. Now, after launching the QRPH for person-to-person transactions, that was in November 2019, the central bank immediately complemented this with the launch of QRPH for person-to-merchant transactions. That was in April of 2021 to simplify the digital payments made by the customers to the businesses. I'm very honored to introduce to you all our keynote speaker for today. He is the head of the Bangko Central's Payments and Currency Management Sector, or the PCMS, which is tasked to address the interplay between digital money and physical currency, and of course support the digital transformation of our country's financial services. Now, he also leads PCMS in maintaining the safety and the integrity of the Philippine currency, as well as ensuring a well-functioning payments and cash ecosystem that fosters long-term economic growth. He brings with him over 28 years of experience in digital and traditional financial services, telecommunications technology, financial inclusion, and consulting services. Now, to talk about BSP's QRPH, accelerating digital payment and financial inclusion in the Philippines, let's all please welcome BSP Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangona.
Thank you, Danny. Pleasant day to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share insights on the means by which QRPH P2M facility and the BSP's collaboration with relevant stakeholders in the national payment system are all working together to accelerate payments digitalization and financial inclusion in the country. I'd also like to thank BusinessWorld and Maya for organizing this event that spotlights QRPH P2M and also increases awareness that leads to adoption of the same digital payment service. Payments digitalization has been at the forefront of the BSP's policy agenda, even before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. The institutionalization of the National Retail Payment System, or NRPS, brought the birth of the PESONet in 2017, InstaPay in 2018, and then QRPH P2P and eGov Pay facilities in 2019. These digital payment rails brought about interoperable retail payment channels that enabled Filipinos to have access to safe, efficient, and reliable digital payment service. The social mobility restrictions and community lockdowns during the outbreak of the pandemic underscored the importance for households, businesses, and the government to have access and digital literacy to use electronic financial services in order to continuously conduct transactions. For instance, the PESONet and the eGov Pay proved to be essential channels for handling government payments and remittances amid the community quarantine restrictions. QRPH, on the other hand, has been providing convenience to customers and cost savings to merchants, since there is no need for expensive POS or data capture terminals to facilitate digital payment for personal and merchant transactions. The establishment of these digital payment rails are aligned with the BSP's Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap. The roadmap aims to accomplish two strategic objectives by the year 2023. First is to strengthen customer preference for digital payments with the goal of digitalizing at least 50% of the total retail payments volume. And second is to enable more innovative and responsive digital financial products and services, and therewith onboard at least 70% of Filipino adults to the financial system through the opening of a transaction account, which may be used for payments. Now, let us focus our discussion in the QRPH payments facilities, which are the latest digital payment streams launched under the NRPS. The QRPH is the National Quick Response or QR Code Standard. QRPH was developed by the BSP in collaboration with the payments industry through the Philippine Payments Management Incorporated or PPMI in order to unify the fragmented QR code system in the Philippines and foster interoperability for QR-enabled payments in the country. Hence, under BSP Circular Number 1055, the BSP has required that all payment service providers adopt QRPH in the design of their QR-aided payment services. QRPH was first launched in 2019 for person-to-person or P2P payments, primarily catering to remittances and payments within the informal sector. Meanwhile, the QRPH person-to-merchant facility was launched in October 2021 to broaden the use case to include merchant payments. QRPH is one of the flagship programs under the BSP's Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap, given its huge potential to spur the digitalization among three priority use cases, such as merchant payments, bills payments, and remittances or P2P payments. The use of QR codes for payments has been gaining traction as an alternative to typing the bank code, account number, and account name. As of year-to-date ending April 2022, the QRPH P2P transactions amounted to 527,800 transactions worth 5.4 billion pesos. These translate to an annual growth of 171.7% in volume and 252.5% in value. As of end April 2022, there are 28 financial institutions that participate in the facility. Meanwhile, riding on the momentum of the successful adoption of QRPH P2P, the QRPH P2M broadens the use case of the National QR Code Standard to enable interoperable digital payments between merchants and their customers, even if they maintain accounts in different payment service providers. A customer does not need to maintain a transaction account with the payment service provider of the merchant in order to pay digitally. So if the customer uses Bank A and the merchant uses Bank B, the customer and the merchant are both enabled to make the merchant payment. QRPH P2M offers convenience since it can potentially enhance the cash management of merchants as payments are credited to their accounts in real time. This is made possible by the InstaPay Rail, the country's 24/7 fast payment system, which facilitates the safe and efficient transfer of funds across different participating payment service providers. With QRPH P2M facility, customers do not pay any fee in paying merchants via the merchant's QR code, whether in their physical or online stores. Likewise, QRPH can be used for a variety of goods and services, since there is no cap in the transaction limit. As of April 2022, we already have 17 participating institutions in the QRPH P2M facility, which is now available in over 473,000 merchant locations or outlets nationwide. In the BSP's 2020 e-payments measurement report, person-to-merchant transactions have consistently been among the key drivers for growing digital payments usage in the country. This trend is expected to continue given that merchant payments comprise over 70% of the total monthly retail payments in the country, of which only 23% is digital. Thus, digitalizing merchant payments is one of our top priorities in order to maximize its huge potential to further advance digital payments adoption in the country. Since the P2M use case covers a big consumer base, both individuals and businesses, it stands to provide a far-reaching impact in terms of broader financial inclusion as merchant payments are digitalized. This information is important to note as the micro and small enterprises represent over 98% of registered businesses in the country and employs about 2/3 of the labor force. Hence, we view that the use of QRPH P2M facility for digitalizing merchant payments will help push forward our financial inclusion goals by empowering micro and small businesses and even informal businesses to realize greater opportunities for growth, thereby supporting inclusive economic recovery. The use of QRPH P2M for payments has been gaining traction as an alternative to traditional debit and credit card payments, given the ease, convenience, and security of merely scanning the code compared to having to bring a card, tapping, dipping, or swiping it, and even signing a charge slip in most cases, or even handing the card to the merchant and losing sight of it momentarily. Through the digital payment streams launched under the NRPS, such as the QRPH payment facilities, and the adoption of a whole-of-government approach for the digital transformation of the financial system, we achieved and even slightly surpassed the initial target of 20% in 2020 that we set when we launched the NRPS framework in 2015. One of the major contributors in the growth of digital payments is merchant payments that include online payments for e-commerce transactions. The rise in payments digitalization in the country was reinforced by the expansion in financial inclusion as more Filipinos actively transact through their electronic money accounts, which increased by 16.8 million as of end 2020, and with their basic deposit accounts, which rose by 3.6 million as of end Q3 2021, both from their end 2019 levels. As of Q3 2021, about 53% of adult Filipinos already have transaction accounts and have been onboarded in the financial system. Given its far-reaching impact on the BSP's payments digitalization and financial inclusion agendas, the BSP's initiatives, stakeholder collaborative engagements, and policy thrusts shall continue to be geared towards bolstering merchant payments digitalization, broadening the usage of the QRPH payments facilities, and addressing pain points that hinder our end users and businesses to realize the benefits of our payment innovations. As we open our discussions today on the role of QRPH in accelerating payments digitalization and broadening financial inclusion in the new economy, I would like to emphasize that despite our progress in moving closer towards our goals in these worthwhile policy agendas, the BSP also remains to be strongly committed to fostering an enabling policy environment that will enable Filipino consumers, businesses, and the government to have broader and more convenient access to innovative digital payment services. Hence, the BSP shall continue to collaborate and engage with the payments industry and relevant stakeholders to bring QRPH facilities closer to the Filipinos, ensure the responsiveness to the needs for quality digital payment services in the new normal, and ultimately make our Filipino customers and businesses become integral participants who are all able to reap the benefits in the sustainable recovery of the Philippine economy. Thank you, and may we have a fruitful and meaningful session this morning.
Thank you so much, DG Mert. Of course, as you mentioned, the roadmap is already there. This has been long in the making, even before pandemic. And so it's just up to the merchants, of course, to pave the way on how this can be implemented and further accelerate the financial inclusion goals of the Bangko Sentral. So thank you very much for setting the context as to why this product, this service, QRPH, will allow merchants to go digital, not just in a faster way, in an affordable way, but in a safer way. So let's now find out how easy it actually is for our merchants, those of you who are in our audience today, to onboard, to be enabled by QRPH. Our next speaker will be tackling just that. He is the president of Voyager Innovations. This is, of course, the leading technology company in the Philippines and its financial technology arm, PayMaya Philippines, or Maya. He is also the co-founder of Maya Bank, the digital banking arm of Voyager. Before joining PayMaya in 2019, he held key global, regional, and local leadership roles in various large financial services companies. Let us all please welcome Mr. Shailesh Vaidwan, or SB for short, who will talk about how consumers and merchants can benefit from QRPH through the Maya QR. Take it away, SB.
Thank you, Danny, and morning, DG Mert, and a very good morning to all the participants in the panel and also all the viewers who have joined us today. Yes, this is truly an exciting topic and very close to our heart, digital payments, but I'll talk about digital payments and going beyond that. For us, we, as Doi mentioned, from being a necessity in the pandemic to it's now become a preferred choice for a lot of consumers. On our own Maya consumer platforms, we now have 47 million registered Filipinos. And more interestingly, these consumers are spread across 99% of the cities and municipalities of the Philippines. So this has now gone beyond the large urban centers. This has now become a nationwide phenomenon. And importantly, merchants, as you mentioned, Ani, of all shapes and sizes and industries are now getting paid instantly with online and on-ground acceptance for digital payments. We have over 630,000 merchant touch points that we have empowered for digital payments. But I think one of the big unleashes that is going to happen is with the adoption of QRPH. I think that is going to lead to another massive acceleration of payments because, as DG Mert said, with just one QR, all payment acceptance from all wallets gets synchronized. Now, Accelerating digital adoption for transactions and promoting financial inclusion is core to our mission at Maya. And we share the goals that BSP has set out for ourselves and for the industry at large. We're really proud and pleased that we were the first e-wallet to integrate QRPH for the P2P or person-to-person. We also very pleased that we were the first e-wallet to embrace QRPH for the person-to-merchant or the P2M rollout. And also importantly, as we are saying, there's the consumer part, but then there is the merchant part of it. So making sure that merchants are able to download and start using QR in a fast, convenient way is what we do. So you can literally get today a free Maya QR kit and start setting yourselves up to accept QR payment in a matter of minutes. And you can use this then QR code on your website. You can use it via social media, messaging app, or display it in store and get paid wherever customers come in and want to use their payments. Now, it's early days for QRPH. The rollout is happening even as we speak, but we're extremely pleased that over 80% of our merchants, including a lot of the MSMEs, are today enabled to accept QR P2M. And importantly, at this stage, while the volumes are still modest, over 90% of all QRPH transactions over the last few months have been processed by Maya. Now, we are fully committed to enabling that all our merchants can accept QRPH payments across the length and breadth of the country. But we are embracing digital payments as more than just ease and convenience. It is, in my mind, the entry point to financial inclusion. Now, what does that mean? So let me give you an example. So if a student walks in and pays a street vendor via QR, that single transaction helps to create a financial footprint, both for the consumer, which is the student, and for the merchant, the street vendor. This footprint, when multiplied over multiple transactions, ultimately will allow them to access financial services such as credit, savings, investments. And the bigger the digital footprint, the greater the inclusion will be in financial services beyond payments. So there is definitely a very large beyond payments use case of greater financial inclusion that rollout and adoption of QRPH for a lot of people who today don't have credit scores or a financial footprint, and for MSMEs and SMEs. Now, for large enterprises like SM, adopting QRPH for payments can enable not just efficient operations, financial reconciliation, cash management, but each QR transaction also contributes valuable data that then can be used to maximize customer offers and launch the next set of products like buy now, pay laters, which can help to create and help them also to do greater business and serve more customers. So right now, we are providing that much needed financial footprint for consumers and merchants with Maya, our new all-in-one money platform, and Maya Business app for merchants, which is powered by PayMaya, the digital payments company, and Maya Bank, our latest neo-banking effort. So we dare say it's if we all massively deploy QRPH, which we are very confident about, the country's financial inclusion goals should be within our reach. The targets that BSP has set out there, while they are lofty and aggressive, but they are the right targets to aim for. And I think soon the conversation will move beyond just the number of QR payments or QR merchants to the number of customers and MSME and SMEs who've been able to get savings and credit and insurance through integrated financial payments and digital banking services by virtue of starting their journey with QRPH and with digital payments. So we are very excited about this journey, and with a progressive regulator like BSP, setting the framework with business partners, and of course, with the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baidwan. So interesting, as you mentioned, way beyond just payments, not just, and even the financial footprint. It is the data and the insights we get into the behaviors of these people that had been historically financially excluded. These kind of data could also be used, as you mentioned, not just for merchants, but even by our regulators, our Banco Central, people here that are creating policy, particularly to address financial exclusion. So indeed, a bigger project here than just facilitating payments. Thank you so much for that. Now, from tackling the ease of contactless payments via QR, and also how easy it is for merchants to avail. Now, 630,000 merchant touch points. There's a QR kit from Maya that is ready to go. Let's now hear from the leaders on how their industries are currently benefiting from QRPH. So some use case scenarios here. Our next speaker is the current Executive Vice President of SM Mart Incorporated. This is the Philippines' #1 retail company, which operates 70 plus malls locally and even has a global presence. He reports to the chairman and manages and leads the SM department store operations and sales support departments. He previously worked as the company's Senior Assistant Vice President for Business Development, the Vice President for Business Development, and the Senior Vice President for Business Development and Store Support to tackle ensuring safe and convenient e-payment transactions for enterprise and consumers using QRPH person-to-merchant or P2M facility. Let us all please welcome Mr. Dino Francis S. Tew.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you, BusinessWorld, Maya, and the partner organizations for putting this together. Let me start with an event 2 years ago that we all went through, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened during its early days, we needed to find a way to get information and get data on our customers, and to make sure that we need to do it in a safe manner. That is where QR codes came in. So the QR codes were used as contactless or touchless systems to display information. Scanning a code led one to a digital copy of a contact tracing form. Sometimes it can even give access to information about the ongoing pandemic, including vaccination sites, requirements, and even the number of live cases. So if there's anything that the pandemic actually allowed us to do, was to introduce the use of QRs, making it a little bit more ubiquitous and having people used to it. Now, the Filipinos, with our high usage of mobile phones and our penchant for anything online, embrace the QR codes. Now, what's interesting here is that QR codes invented in 1994 only started getting to be used in the banking and payment industry in 2011, with the codes being used to store banking or credit card information. However, in the Philippines, it's not as widely used because of our high number of unbanked population. That changed with the intro of digital wallets, and that is when the QR codes started to gain traction as alternative to cash or debit credit card payments. Prior to this, whenever a customer had to pay using their digital wallet, we had to manage different systems. We needed to have different sets of hardware to be able to complete the transaction. The QR code allowed us to simplify all of that. So a customer just needed to scan a QR code or to show a QR code, and we would be able to use a single system to scan and process it. And this is also highly secure because the customer gets a real-time and direct confirmation of payment, and they are certain that the money goes to the intended merchant or intended recipient. Okay. The QRPH introduces a standard that would allow us to eliminate the need to display numerous QR codes in our establishments and to purchase expensive electronic data capture system. This will help us simplify our operations further. As such, one of the major benefits of QRPH is its interoperability. This interoperability would allow increased use cases for Filipinos, and as such, the adoption of the QRPH would lead to better business for us. This would lead us to better recovery and would allow us to further get away from the doldrums of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tew. So from, just a data gathering information device during the pandemic towards something that has provided concrete savings and productivity to the SM Store. So thank you so much. That's a very big enterprise. Very good to have your insights. We will be calling back on you later on for more details on that. Now, of course, the QRPH is envisioned by the Bangko Sentral to bring the unbanked and smaller merchants closer to the digital economy with its hassle-free interoperable PH. Let's see how the small enterprises are using this mechanism. Our next speaker is Negosyo Senior Advisor. She is a strategic and business development advisor convening the Angat Lahat sa Digital movement for small businesses in the Philippines and the ASEAN. She is also currently involved with FinTech Magpie.im and EduTech Aptitude Infotech Solutions and Global Learning Access. Now, since March of 2021, she has been leading the COVID-19 readiness and campaigns of Negosyo to make coronavirus testing innovations and vaccines accessible to Philippine enterprises. To discuss empowering small businesses and people through the use of QRPH peer-to-peer or P2P payment facility, let's all please welcome Ms. Josephine Jopin Romero.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jopin from Negosyo. Thank you, Danny, for that introduction. So maybe best for me to share, taking off from Mr. Chu's point about the use of QRPH during the pandemic. I mean, the MSMEs actually look at the last 2 years as a valuable and unexpected way to, as a sandbox of some sort in digital transformation. And why is this? You see, as Mr. Chu said, there was a lot of uncertainty at the onset of the lockdowns in March of 2020. So there needed to be a way to get out and still reach our market and still move our goods. So in true Negosyo form, in partnership with our agency bureau partners, like the Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Agriculture, Department of Tourism, and even international organizations like the New Zealand Embassy and so forth. We tried to expand our mentorship of MSMEs from the face-to-face, which then was not possible, to online. And we introduced for the first time an ASEAN-backed module on digitalization, which came to be very valuable because then we were able to help these MSMEs immediately transition from closed doors of their physical stores to suddenly they're open in their virtual stores. So what we did was to find out how they would be responding to the use of digital payments or other digital tools to continue with their business, was to send them pre-session surveys as to how ready they are for digitalization. And we found that the responses in 2020, 2021, and 2022 were remarkably different. Just like Mr. Doy Vea was saying earlier that the numbers between 2017 and 2020 were a difference of 3%. You know, those 3% actually are a tremendous difference. There's a big difference in 3% lack of digital use of digital tools, and suddenly that they had to be forced to use different digital tools for their businesses. So 2020, you'd see that most of the respondents would say that they are scared of using, or they're not using any digital tools, including digital payments, nor QR codes for any particular use. And 2021, you'll find their responses were already using QR codes for digital payments and for contact tracing. And 2022, the expansion of the use of digital tools, QR codes were not only used for payments, for for contact tracing, but for many other uses like marketing, like logistics, and other operational needs of the company, of the enterprises. So nothing like a pandemic to or a virus to really get them out of the doldrums, as Mr. Chu said. So being forced to reach out to their clients or to their suppliers by means of a contactless tool like QR code became the norm. Now, of course, there are customer concerns that also affected the merchants that in their adopting of QR codes. One, of course, as many know in the Philippines, is the availability of internet and the smartphone penetration. There's also the learning curve and the scare about security, data privacy, and reliability of technology. In GoNegosyo, together with the different departments I mentioned earlier, in 2020, we started introducing these tools for them to use. Kind of not ready, but they were starting to use different kinds of wallets. 2021, soon after the launch of QRPH, we invited the Deputy Governor Fonashare to talk about it, and also some of the wallets. PayMaya was one of them. Again, somewhat ready. These MSMEs were getting it, but not quite adopting it. They were more into using their personal QR codes or their personal accounts than registering their enterprise account with the different wallets or the different banks they were linked to. Now, 2022, as early as the first quarter of 2022, once we got the surveys, probably 80 to 90% of the people there were saying that they actually had enterprise accounts for their digital payment needs. So no longer were they sending out their personal cell phone numbers or mobile numbers, but giving the QR code for their enterprises. So the adoption of the whales like SM Store also gave confidence to the MSMEs to use the QRPH or to use the QR codes for payments. And when it comes to MSMEs, it's also a matter of timing when we start bombarding them with information. So maybe we were too early in June of 2021 when we started talking about QRPH, because then the merchants were really just trying to get on board the use of QR for digital payments. But with sessions like this and with more planned immersive sessions that we have for the rest of the year and next year, I think we can convince even more people about the use of QRPH confidently. Now, some of the merchant concerns that we got from these surveys included the onboarding, which was already mentioned by Maya. The onboarding has become simpler and like ready, more accessible, like with these kits that are mentioned for Maya. It's a very big deal. The cost of POS terminals is also another concern that our small enterprises mentioned. And the fact that many of them, before they even got into an e-wallet, did not have banks. So now that with the advent of e-wallets having their own banks, so that they don't have to leave the app in moving money from the wallet to the bank, is also a big deal for the MSMEs. So, but of course, this is another way by which GoNegosyo and the different agencies are trying to mentor these MSMEs. What we want them to do and what we're trying to get them to understand is these banks are for small needs. And when they ask us during, say, our mentorship sessions, how come these wallets or these digital banks only allow a certain amount of money or a certain number of transactions to be had in, say, a certain month or a certain time period, that's when we educate them to say that, this is for you to start, and then you can get to bigger. Once you get bigger, then you go to bigger things. And a more regular bank account. So, but all of these efforts, especially introducing them to the use of QR first with the contact tracing and immediately reaching their suppliers and their merchants with the QR code, has been a big help in really giving confidence to the MSMEs to use digital payments, and not only that, to use digital tools even more as time goes. So to wrap up my statement, I would just like to say that one of the things that really the wish list of MSMEs is to have more predictability in how e-commerce or digital commerce for them would be in this transition period as we get out of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romero, for such clear and concise, precise points there. As you mentioned here, you've even mentioned the bottlenecks like internet penetration or even smartphone penetration, the cost of the POS, and how to migrate from people that have never actually had any form of system towards this system. So we will try to tackle that later on during the panel discussion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the insights of leaders from both big and small enterprises on how QRPH is making an impact on the private sector and MSMEs. Let's now discover how QRPH is improving the ease of doing business within the government. Our next speaker is a highly motivated, dedicated career executive service officer with a significant contribution and experience in public sector management, specifically planning, monitoring, and evaluation, performance management, public administration, and public policy formulation. Appointed in 2018 as Assistant Secretary for Digital Philippines, her current portfolio in the Department of Trade and Industry include managing the e-commerce team, the Supply Chain and Logistics Management Division, and the DTI's Business Name Registration System. To shed more light about how QRPH is helping the government provide better and faster services to the Filipinos, let's all please welcome DTI Assistant Secretary, Ms. Mary Jean T. Pacheco.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you to Business World, and thank you to Maya, and thank you to all the partner organizations for inviting the Department of Trade and Industry. I have a few slides, Jester. If we could share the slide. The brief says I should tackle how QRPH is helping government provide better and faster services. When I received the invite, I immediately was reminded of the first meeting that we had with Mr. Vea and Maya's government ambassador Marvin Santos, when we were introduced to Pay Maya then, on being including Pay Maya in the business name registration system. So I like really to answer in that context. It will be practical on how government is using digital payments and now QRPH in order to provide this better and faster service. So, but let me go to a little bit of start off with a little bit of context. Next slide, please. Earlier on, DG Mert did say about the digital payments transformation roadmap. And we, the Department of Trade, especially with the e-commerce roadmap, we support and we are the partners of the Bangko Central in this area. I think DG Bert did already say about the goals of the plan, 70%, 50%. But if you see, there's a very important slide in the roadmap that really talks about the share of digital payments when you talk about government. You can see in the slide that really government digital payments in government, the share of digital payments for government to all transactions is a very high 93%. So this is, I think, a good barometer of the progress and the readiness of government to get into digital payments, to make it faster, more convenient, and to promote ease of doing business. Next slide, please. So now I go very quickly because the test of the pudding is in the eating. How does government how is QRPH helping in providing better services? We in the DTI, when you are setting up a business, especially for a sole proprietorship, the first thing that you should do is to get your business name, and you go to the DTI business name registration system. When we adopted digital payments using all the other payment providers, when Maya was included in the options, what we really saw was really an uptake by the citizens, no, on choosing digital payments, whereas before it was about 35% that pay online or through digital payments. It's now the tide has turned. 65% to 70% now, of applicants in business name are actually using digital payments. So why is it, why what is the benefit? It's really convenient, it's reliable, and it's secure. So it's really as easy. I'd like to show everyone. This is a copy of a screenshot of how you should do it when you apply for a business name. And our secretary would always say business name registration in 8 minutes. You know, the president said no pila, no pila, and this is exactly what we've done in DTI. And with the with digital payments there, it's all there. You need your wallet, and now with QRPH, you have fan transfers and all. It's quite easy. First you get to choose your name, you process, and then after a while you get to a payment page. You see the QR code of QRPH. Next slide. You scan that, and then you see the options. You press Maya. Next slide. And then it's payment processing. All of these, we tried it. It's less than a minute. Can you imagine the option of going through going through DTI office, paying the cashier, falling in line, all of those, no need, because that's how that is how reliable. That is how fast the QR code does for you. You don't need to input your amount, because the system already knows that you will pay this amount, and it's deducted to your wallet. It's error free, because you don't need to, you are assured that you won't input the wrong number of the wrong account. So this is really quite, I would like to say, revolutionizing for us, because it's really something that is a policy and a principle of ease of doing business. So, as I said, in less than a minute, there you go. You get paid, and you get your business name registration in 8 minutes. Next slide, please. But of course, I'd like at this point in time to say that one of the things that we're doing is really to help the BSP in promoting digital payments. We know that digital payments will make e-commerce more robust. And so what we would like really is for the public to join us with a social media campaign, which we're saying, ibayad mo, making everyone know about what the good of what the benefits are of digital payments. So one of that, this is our carousel. I'm showing online our carousel, which really, promotes digital payment. Maging fearless, go cashless. No, that's the message that we want to say. But there is also, next slide, please. There's also a special feature that we have on the QRPH, because this is what we need people to know. You just scan it, you send, and then it's done. Similarly to what we have shown you when you apply for a business name permit in the Department of Trade. So it's very easy, because that's what we say, basta e-commerce, madali. And this is the QR page is one of the tools that makes it easy for everyone to go into digital payments. So there are other campaigns. Next slide, please. We created, and I'd like to thank BSP, Jimmer, thank you, you're with us, where we launched an innovation to our social media campaign. We came out with a 4-part mini series that we call a paid drama. In episode 2 and in episode 3, we really showed how easy it is, and how you use when you pay to merchants, just simply using your QR code. So the next slide. I guess I'd like to take this opportunity to invite all of the listeners, those who are viewers, to please click on the scan the QR code. Scan the QR code and watch our Pay Me with Your Love series, where you'll see the promotion of digital payments, which we are really promoting together with the Banco Central. So this is it. Thank you very much. Tandaan po natin, basta e-commerce madali. Thank you.
Thank you, Asik. Pay me with your love, Ibayan. I think that campaign, alam mo, sana all sectors of government would accept, di ba? I mean, of course, you are paving the way for the rest of the ways in which we operate. Many things still need to be not just digitalized, but specifically using this QR code would save a lot of hassles, long lines in many public spaces. So thank you so much for that. I think it's now we've heard from public sector leaders, we've heard from a fintech player, and let's try and get more nuance into the discussion, because there's no doubt that this is a very useful tool. There's no doubt that it's beneficial, but specifically, how beneficial is this, and how easy is it really to get into this? Now, before we proceed to that, I just want to tell our audience here that if you have any questions, just go ahead and send that, and I will try my best to tackle those if we do have time, and you can also address that to specific panelists here. All right, so let's call back on the screens our respected speakers. We have, of course, SB from Maya, DG Dangonan, Asek Pacheco, Mr. Q, Mr. Pero, and let's get our Q&A. All right. Now, I wanted to go back. First, let's talk to our merchants here, and I'll address this to Mr. Q of the SM Store, and also to Go Negosyo and the TTI. You already mentioned that it is beneficial, so there's no doubt about that. It's something that is quite intuitive to everyone. But give us more meat on that. In practical terms, why is it beneficial to the SM Store? Do you have numbers that show that this has increased productivity, this has increased your transactions, this has made people more willing to buy? And tell us how these features compared to the old systems that we've been using, and whether people are now comfortable with this. Is there a complete shift already of cultural mindset in adopting this?
Sure. I can see two major benefits to the QR code for our business. Number one is it allows a very, very quick adoption to digital forms of payments. With people getting more used to buying and paying online, especially with their digital wallets, we needed to find a way to start accepting these forms of payments in our stores in a convenient, safe, and fast way. If in terms of numbers, at this point in time, cash is still king when it comes to our side. However, we can see a huge percentage of transactions being paid for by online digital wallets, and this is about maybe 12-15% of our business. So we needed to find a way to allow this to happen in our stores in a faster manner. And as Asek Pacheco has shown, QR codes allowed us to do this. The second major benefit I can see is interoperability. A lack of a standard has us handling multiple systems, and this calls for additional investments, and actually gets extra time and resources from our side for us to be able to implement any new payment mode. So having a standard such as QRPH will definitely negate this and allow us to be able to accept more non-cash payment solutions that our customers are using.
Okay, Mr. Q, just to follow up on that very quickly, how easy has it been to shift completely? Can that even happen? Complete shift from the POS systems towards this? Are you implementing that in the SM stores already and trying to minimize the costs of this? And how does that work, especially since these were already integrated?
Okay, it's not a shift. It's the word that you use. It's more of an integration. So
Okay.
we have our existing POS system that allows us to accept different forms of payments. Having an integrated system with a digital partner through a QR code allows us to have that faster transaction instead of having like 2 or 3 or 4 steps before we can finish the transaction. It's just a simple scanning, and that's it. It's done.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Jopin Romero. No? What about for the MSMEs? This must be a little bit more complex in that you're not just convincing them to have non-cash. The first step was convincing them to have POS systems, and now you're saying, okay, wag na muna yung POS system, let's do QR. It's something completely different, but they were just starting to be included. How is this working for them? Are they as excited about this shift, and are they catching up?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. Actually, for the MSMEs, it's a leapfrog. So those who were so scared about getting on board the POS, the terminals of the banks before, have actually discarded that path and gone directly to using the mobile POS that the companies like Maya and the rest are giving. So instead of going through that, they go directly to the QR, the use of the QR. Like I said, actually, the start is using personal QR, and then graduating to setting up their enterprise QRs. So that's one. And instead of integrating to say a cash register, a regular cash register, as the SM store, for instance, has shared, they just go for the handheld or mobile POS. Another thing that I could say for the MSMEs is that when they go through this handy way of using QR, so there are benefits to them. One of which is that suddenly their economic activities, are recorded in a single file. So their payments to suppliers are done through there. Their sales are also recorded there. And then this makes it actually easier for them to know how much obligations they have at the end of the month. So for those that are graduating from the micro to small, so they're now starting to pay their SSS or other government compliance requirements, even VAT, your value-added tax. So the fact that they now have a record, that they don't have to transfer from, say, written receipts or cash receipts, and they're all now in a single file, makes it easier for them. So that's another benefit that they have. Besides leapfrogging to having an electronic way of doing financial transactions, then they also graduate to a more efficient operations and compliance with government requirements.
Very interesting. So the financial footprint, as mentioned, no, a tally of all the operations that they can use in the future to be more included. Asik Pacheco of the DTI, I'm very curious to know, how are you using, at least in your department, the data, the information so far that you've been able to gather from those that are using the QRPH in at least the DTI processes?
Thank you, Danny. With the new system that we introduced, which is I'll talk about the business name registration system. So the first thing that we've done, of course, have monitoring, even having the opportunity to monitor who is paying online and walk-in is already a good barometer, no, that we are able to check and to so that we can define policies on how to improve. That's what we use with the data that we get. We know how they're paying. We know how they're paying. We know what type of transaction that they do. We do have those analytics with us, and I think now with QRPH, I think this would be additional in the dashboard that we have. So what we do with it is really to improve the services even more, to how to make it easier. Some people still don't know how. So what we do is to make sure that we teach them how. We partner with Maya, for example, to help our clients, no, on how to adapt digital payments. So that's what we do with the data that we have.
Okay, thank you so much, ASEC. I'll throw this to DG of the central bank. Is it your goal? You mentioned 50% of all transactions to be digital. Is it your goal, as in the DTI, to try and eliminate non-digital transactions, at least for government-related services, and perhaps force people for quicker adoption? Force people now, no choice. This is the way to go, or is there going to be quite a long transition period, waiting for the customers to be the one to start adopting this?
Thank you, Danny. Danny, there's a lot of benefits that the people, the businesses, and the whole country can gain from digitalizing payments. Many of these have already been cited by both Francis and Joe, and of course, ASEC Jean earlier. So what we really want is for our population to have access to financial services, and it has been proven that digitalizing payments is an effective way of achieving that policy objective. So we want to make digital payments more and more attractive to all consumers, individuals, businesses, and even government. That's why our policies are geared towards that. And of course, there are other deeper benefits that can be gained, like deeper financial inclusion, and which of course upgrades the quality of lives of our people, and also expands the economy. And Danny, the incoming finance secretary, my current boss, Governor Diokno, also emphasized that digitalizing government transactions, including payments, is very important for expanding revenue base and increasing tax collection. So first doing that before even thinking of adding new taxes. So it's really very important, Danny, for us to do that.
Thank you for that, DG. Now, I want to ask Shailesh of Maya Bank. We've said on and on, this is not just about efficiency. This is not just about payments. This is about financial inclusion. And we had Ms. Jopin of Go Negosyo mention this is just the first step for MSMEs to then get a more regular bank account. Can you nuance that? Is this a compelling reason for merchants to adopt QRPH or even contactless payments in general, for them to eventually have a bank account? Is that the end goal? Can we not stop at having this system already?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's great for me to see Isaac Pacheco and Jopin and Dino. All are my clients to be talking about payments, QR payments, and other payments so knowledgeably. So it's fantastic, and and with DG Mert and BSP laying the framework, I mean, it is really energizing. Now, Danny, one of the reasons we got the Maya Bank license was exactly that, because we recognize that payments is the largest use case. All of us do payments pretty much on a daily basis. And as a MSME or an SME or large enterprise, you have to process payment, accept payments. It's oil that keeps the wheels of commerce turning. So payments is definitely the simplest and the most important and the most compelling use case. But it has to go beyond that, right? And that is why we constantly, every single day, look at our onboarding processes to make sure that, that piece works really seamlessly. So for MSMEs, you don't even need to get a device, right? You can just take your mobile app, your smartphone, and download what used to be known as Pay Maya Negosyo, now Maya Business, And that app straightway starts allowing you to start accepting payments, QR payments on the app itself, right? Which is what was, I think, referenced by Jopin. So you don't even need devices. You can really start with your own existing smartphone. But yes, we're constantly looking at the onboarding requirements and working that through. Now, one of the key things is to go to the next level of financial inclusion is for, let's say, an MSME or SME who we know have very little banking footprint or a bank account. By getting the Maya Bank license, we are now enabling them to automatically set up on the back of the same KYC that they do to become a payment acceptance merchant, to become also an enterprise or a deposit that they create for themselves. Now that is where they can then start parking all the funds that they receive for payments. And that does two things. One is it encourages them and allows them to see all their transaction flows real time. So on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, they can see all the payment transactions that they've done. That money, by virtue of going directly into a bank account, then allows them to make use of that either for other payment purposes to the suppliers, vendors, or to start saving some of that, right? So we are actually within that even saving account creating what we are calling goal space. So if you want to start saving to, get some equipment for your business or something else, you can start doing that. And third, as we start seeing that money movement, that cash flow allows us to then start looking at providing you with loans. And we've launched that for today, our on-ground network, our Maya centers. Based on the cash flow, we give them short-term working capital loans. So setting up the next level of financial services is equally important, because while they will see payment as for ease, convenience, and all the rest, it is important for them to recognize and understand how this unleashes much more power of the formal financial system for them. And then based on that, you can offer more services, whether insurance, the ability to invest that in some simple instruments beyond just a saving deposit. So we see this as the start of a journey of driving larger financial inclusion. We've already launched the deposit taking. We've launched lending products, which we are piloting and trying out there. And we see really positive feedback because it's convenient, easy, and something that, and a brand that they're comfortable using and they're familiar with.
All right. So, in fact, this is the catalyst that we need to spur all of those plans that, of course, are beneficial for our not just merchants but consumers. I just want to go back to our merchants, Mr. Tew of the SM Store. Of course, you are a giant that has implemented this, but again, many other merchants have yet to do this. Why is that? What were your main considerations? What do you think that merchants are considering when they want to not just adopt this contactless payments, but specifically QRPH? What's the bottleneck that still needs to be addressed for everyone else to come on board?
Okay, I think it's the integration to our own internal systems. SM is lucky that we're big enough to have our own resources that would allow us to integrate any system into our system. It takes time, it takes resources, and even if there is a kit available, one still needs to be quite well versed with how the systems work together to be able to ensure that it's integrated properly. So that would probably be one bottleneck. Although it's just a matter of time, I would think, before all the other businesses would be much more comfortable with the technology behind it to be able to integrate it into their own systems.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to Go Negosyo, same question there. What's the bottleneck that's keeping MSMEs? I think you mentioned in your presentation, and rightly so, we were in the middle of the pandemic. Medyo mahirap naman to assess all of these things. Now we're finally in a place where, okay, we can sit down, we can make plans, we can go and integrate and make decisions. Tell us, are there still some bottlenecks here that need to be addressed, or is this just a matter of time?
Well, yes, there were really perceived bottlenecks, and one of which is that if they onboard or they adopt these different wallets or electronic means of digital payments before, then their storefront will be covered with so many QR codes. So this QRPH is actually a welcome development for them, I'm sure, and I've heard that in many mentorship sessions. So it's as new policies, new technologies developed or are made available to the Philippine enterprises, then they start adopting things. I also mentioned earlier that the right timing in introducing things to our MSMEs also matters a lot, because they are inundated with a lot of problems. So you have to find that way to immerse them into finding solutions for their biggest issues, and then at the right time, of course, so that they can then adopt things. But adoption can really only expand. So we'll see this more as we go along. And also, I'd like to say that the Filipino enterprise, just like any Filipino, is maparaan. They will always find a way to make these things work for them, as long as they understand it. And then they'll even find the loopholes to make it even more efficient for them than what was intended originally by whoever introduced the policies. So an example of which is like June 12th, Sunday. I saw in my in several group chats and Facebook groups with the MSMEs, this chart of organized by a person, an enterprise. This person summarized the different wallets and electronic financial or digital apps that he already signed on, and listed down the interbank and interwallet fees for this for each of these tools, and on his own made that and then shared it with as many merchants as he could share it with, just to share the idea that this is not something strange, and in fact this is something that can save us money. So it's a matter of time, and as the merchants find ways to expand their market using these digital tools, or shrink their costs again using these digital tools, and then recreate themselves, they will continue to adopt.
All right, great answer there. No arbitrage here. Just do the research, do the math, and it will probably make sense for you. Now, speaking of, I'll throw this question from the audience to Shailesh. How can, and also the BSP, sir, if you want to jump in, how can we lessen the requirements for merchants to sign up for QRPH? So it appears, at least to this audience member, signing up as a merchant isn't as easy yet as signing for a Maya account. Can you clarify that, SP?
Sure. I mean, I have to give a nod to BSP. I mean, like I said, today for online, if you have an online business, you're running it from your home and you're happy to accept, or even if you have a physical business, you can download online and pretty much instantly do your KYC. Now the KYC, once you start becoming a part of the formal digital financial ecosystem, there is a responsibility that also comes to you as an SME or an MSME or large enterprise, because you're now integrated in the formal money movement chain that is actually a global chain. And hence the need to make sure that we protect the financial system requires you to provide some level of documentation to show that you are who you are. And we also know that there are malactors out there who are looking for loopholes to do all kinds of things, like whether it's whether it's money laundering and other things. So there is a certain requirement where you have to provide us with certain proof of you being an enterprise, with its BIR certification that you have and some of the other registration requirements. Now we're constantly looking to simplify that, take those online so that you're able to just upload those easily. We have also recognized that for a lot of the MSMEs, they don't necessarily have great data connectivity and also need a little bit more hand-holding to set themselves up. So we've actually created an on-ground sales force that goes across the length and breadth of the country, which helps some of these MSMEs to come on board by onboarding them, taking the physical documents, putting together static QR, printing that out and putting in the shop face so that they're able to start doing the transactions and helping them to set up the app on their mobile. So we recognize that there is a level of education that is required. We're constantly looking at the paperwork required and the KYC document required. We're constantly in dialogue with the BSP to see what further can be done to simplify. If more and more of these sources of documents can become API-based, or we can, as an organization, get that directly from BIR or from other government entities, that will, of course, make the onboarding even easier on a go-forward basis. But there is some requirement, and we're constantly seeing how we can make it less difficult and as easy as possible to onboard.
All right, I think DG, this is your opportunity to say how are you going to make it easier, or at least this KYC process?
Yeah, while we leave the product quality and the handling of the customer experience, incorporating human-centered design to the payment service providers like Maya, we in the BSP would like to make sure that we do not impose unnecessarily requirements that will make it difficult for Maya Bank to make it easy to their customer or merchant customers to sign up. So if there are still any of these issues, then I'll be very happy to listen and of course adjust the policy towards that. An example of that, Danny, is the KYC that Shailesh mentioned. For this to be efficient and to reach scale, we have to maximize the digital play. And doing that would require someone who's entering the system to identify him herself using, through electronic means. And further to that, government is rolling out the Phil ID, or the Philippine National ID, and about, I believe, 12 million of us Filipinos already have our IDs, and this greatly simplifies the process of onboarding not only individuals but also merchants into facilities like QRPH P2M.
All right, thank you, DG. And just to close this discussion, I want to throw it back to Asek and Checo. What are the at least short-term plans, projects of the DTI? I think you already mentioned several of them, but also just jumping in, asking you on how you might, address the gaps that we are still seeing in terms of adoption. Asek, may you come off of mute?
Yeah,
Please?
sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. So we are working really very closely with the Bangko Central. DG Mert knows this. And I just wanted to share that because the DTI, of course, we're encouraging the micro, small, medium enterprises really to go digital and adopt digital payments. Advocacy, I think, is one of the areas where we can help as a department to the BSP. This is why we mentioned earlier on that our interventions are relative to the Ibayad Mo campaign. I just wanted to maybe share a little bit of some facts. We did the DTI when we did the e-commerce roadmap. We came out with a survey on the digitalization of SMEs. So we wanted to measure how the digital maturity of the SMEs. We label them as whether you are basic, intermediate, or advanced. But we realized that there are still businesses out there who are level 0, who don't even have an email. There was a question that is relevant to the discussion today because we asked them about the adoption of digital payments, and it's very important what the study revealed. 54% of those that we interviewed said they don't want to adopt digital payments because they're already used to old habits. 43% also there's no need. So old habits, doesn't need. And I don't know how. Those are where we're coming from, and those are important issues to address. So we need to. This is a culture. This should be an advocacy, and we feel very strongly about having to inform everybody the impact, of having. Or the convenience that anyone would have if you adopt digital payments. So for now, we are very strong in assisting the BSP on the advocacy, as we are also in partnership with the BSP and Better Than Cash Alliance. I hope they're watching also on the digitizing merchant payments, because it is also about the merchant having to review its business process. And DG Mert knows about this, and we're working with his team on that. So many things that are there. I must also again mention, which I forgot earlier on, that the BSP, of course, they initiated this Executive Order 170, which is to encourage the adoption of digital payments in government, which the president has signed very recently. So there, government is quite active in promoting digital payments, whether it's with merchants and whether in government itself. So
Okay, wonderful. And Miss
Yes,
Jopin,
Danny, if I may add to that, if I may.
of course, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jean, for bringing it up. This such a great opportunity to increase awareness of the Executive Order 170. This is, of course, the government's way of making its disbursement and collection transactions more efficient, and also part of it would be to increase the convenience to the constituents, and also to reduce leakage and revenue loss in the process. But I'd also like to add that apart from that, this is also an effort of the national government together with the local government to do a demonstration effect, or something like a walk the talk, wherein we would like to further give incentives and motivation to our merchants who, like what Jean said, who are used to old habits, who don't know how to make that step in order to use facilities like QRPHP2M. Because in that executive order, the national government and local government units are mandated to use the digital payments for collections that are those that are only aligned with the National Retail Payment System framework of the BSP. So that will include, of course, QRPHP2M, InstaPay, eGovPay, and other services, and it will cease government's use of other payments facilities that are non NRPS compliant. So those proprietary QR codes and those merchants having to sign up with 10 payment service providers, we would like to see them to be a thing of the past.
Okay, very clear directive there from DG. And I think, Ms. Jopin, you wanted to add, no, in terms of your plans for perhaps Negosyo and the MSME sector in making sure that the QRPH is adopted.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to, I forgot to point this out, because there's this initiative of the BSP that's really very useful in making it easy to go on board for merchants, and also giving them the confidence to adopt even faster. And this is the fact that the BSP has this operator, a list of operators of payment systems. You saw the logo earlier of in one of the slides of DG Mert, with this bird in the seal, no? So that they are monitoring and evaluating enterprises or entities that can help merchants to onboard and use digital payments faster without the having to have their own IT team, and then making it easy for them to figure out what onboarding requirements they need to submit. That really helps the merchants, especially the smaller ones, to adopt digital payments, particularly this QR payments. So I just wanted to add that, because it's something that the BSP has introduced. It gives us merchants confidence, and it also keeps the payment systems on their toes, so that to keep them honest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Jopin. And before we take a photo op, I think we just have 5 minutes left. I think I have one last question here from the audience. QRPH is good. How can we encourage more customers and merchants to use QRPH? Can we incentivize? So apart from this intrinsic motivation that you've all mentioned, that it all makes sense naman talaga, are there additional incentives that can take place? And I think with that, I'll ask you to answer that together with your closing statements. Let's kick off with Shailesh of Maya.
Thank you, Dani. So absolutely. I mean, for us, we play on both sides. We've been talking so far around the merchant, the acceptance part of it, but the other side of the coin is getting more and more customers to have a payment mechanism so that they can make payments digitally. And that's what we do. And that's why our Maya payment platform, we have 47 million registered users, and every day we do more and more features and benefits. One of the key ones actually that we have launched is QR always welcome. It's a cashback. So actually from a consumer perspective, we're trying to push them also to ask the merchant and to prompt so that there is a even greater adoption. So if you walk in and do a QR transaction using your Maya, you get a 1% cash back. So that is an immediate payment and incentive for you. And then, of course, there's a promo that runs on it. Some of people will get, in fact, 10%, and some will get 100% cash back on that particular transaction. And the idea really is to create both a push and a pull for QR payments as we are talking. So we are deploying at the level where there's large enterprises, small enterprises, medium enterprises, but at the same time, pushing the consumers also and giving them incentive. And linked to that is, like I said, going beyond payments, the all-in-one money platform that we're creating for the MSME, SMEs, and for the consumers, so that they start getting comfortable with just the whole concept of digital financial services, payments, and beyond that. So we are truly excited, and we are constantly working to see how the points that have been raised on simplifying, making it easier to onboard. We also take on board the fact that this is a journey. There is a level of education also that is required, and that's why, as I mentioned, we have videos that we put out there on YouTube on how to enable first-time merchants to become QR accepting merchants. You go to our website, you have all these tools that are there to help you onboard and do that quickly. So we are constantly working and very pleased to partner with different players in the industry and regulator to make sure that we can make it easier and continue to educate. And then I think just as a proposition, push on both sides of the house to accelerate the adoption even further and faster of QRPH.
All right, thank you, SB. Cashback incentive, you're right. I mean, onboarding needs to happen as quickly as we can, and we need those types of incentives. Mr. Chu of SM Stores, how are you convincing people to get on board? What incentives are you providing for people to switch not just from cash but from other modes of payments into QRPH?
As Shailesh has mentioned, we do offer incentives, cashbacks, additional discounts, and additional values whenever other modes of payments are used, and we will continue to do so. And I think the biggest benefit of those digital modes of payments is that they're very intuitive. So, for example, let's say QR codes. There's nothing more intuitive than putting up your camera and scanning the QR code. It's that easy to use. So the adoption will happen and it will take place. And we as merchants do in fact try to add incentives to make sure that people will find reasons to try out the digital payments.
Okay, Ms. Jopin, what about you for the MSMEs? Of course, they're going to adopt this, but how do they encourage the consumers to do this as well?
Well, the merchants definitely love the cashback and other incentives of the big players. And besides that, they also look forward to being part of the marketing umbrella because as education happens, as Mr. Shailesh has said, they learn more about standards, international standards and local standards of these digital payments. Now, they pass this on, the savings that they have and also the standards that they learn to their own customers. So, they're not selfish about that. As long as, like I mentioned earlier, they're able to expand their market reach and then shrink their cost and recreate themselves, they will use whatever incentives they receive and share this with their own customers.
All right. And finally, from the government side, of course, DTI, ASEC, Pacheco, tell us, how are you going to incentivize the normal public to use the services that are currently available and increase your targets for the usage.
Yeah. So Danny, I shall leave the incentives to the businesses. I defer to DG Mert on that. For me, if you ask, it's the benefit itself is the incentive. It's a matter of us having really a full court press on increasing awareness so that people will adopt it. What is more, what better incentive than to tell people it's so convenient, it's very reliable, it's secure. You don't need to put in your instead of having your number there, you have your QR code, so you know that it goes directly to your account. You don't need to carry cash if you're a consumer. And most importantly, that we should mention, when you go digital payments, you don't need change. The exact amount, you just put it in. So what better way to do that, to really inform everybody about the convenience of digital payments with a massive information campaign, both to consumers and to merchants.
Correct. So it's all about financial education at the end of the day. DG,
That's right.
your final thoughts.
Thank you, Danny. So for our part of the BSP, we're also working on both supply side and demand side issues in order to really reach adoption of digital payments, particularly QRP, HP2M at scale. On the supply side, we're working with Shailesh, Maya, and also his peers on ensuring that more and more merchants are onboarded, and that these merchants drop the use of proprietary QR codes and adopt the national standard QR codes. We're also working with him and his peers in expanding the number of customers who are enabled to use QRP HP2M. You see, Danny, there are 18 payment service providers participating currently. And we want to see more payment service providers participating, because this enables their customers to access and use QRP HP2M and pay the merchants of Shailesh and his peers. On the demand side, as I've mentioned earlier, we do walk the talk. The president has signed Executive Order 170, and government will definitely be seen as a user or as acceptance points for these QRPH, P2M, and other digital payment services in the NRPS framework. So, with the number of people that are transacting with the government and with the only option being those aligned with the NRPS, including QRPH P2M. So I hope, Danny, that would already induce our customers, like consumers, businesses, and to try and love QRPH P2M. So my parting message is, I'd like to thank BusinessWorld and Maya Bank for putting this event together. I'd also like to thank my fellow panelists in this event for helping us instill confidence in digital payments, particularly QRPH P2M. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, DG. And with that, of course, we wrap up our session, but we'd like to call back to the screen Sir Doidea for a quick photo opportunity. Hi, sir. All right. Okay. So if you can all keep your smiles in 3. Okay, let's take one more for safety in 3, 2. Okay, so thank you so much. What a very insightful session indeed. I learned quite a lot, and very, very hopeful, of course, that we'll have more of these sessions with updates on the take-up, and of course, the inclusion of people into the formal financial and economic system. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, and thank you, audience, for all of your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, this session of Business World Live, or Business World Insights rather, is co-presented by Maya with Partners Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Franchise Association, Negosyo, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Makati Business Club, and Philippine Retailers Association, and our media partner, the Philippine STAR. Again, on behalf of Business World, this has been Danny Laurel of One News. Stay safe and stay informed, and have a very good afternoon.
Times may have changed, but still, we continue to see the possibilities and dream of a new beginning, a better way of life. We do what we can to keep ourselves safe, healthy, and thriving in the new normal. And with these new challenges, when businesses and citizens need their financial transactions to be more convenient, safe, and secure, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is ready to implement the new national QR standard for merchants to accept payments. A necessity in the new normal, digital payments are now easier and more convenient to use for both consumers and businesses. QRPH streamlines the process for merchants to accept payments with just one QR code. Consumers pay for transactions using their preferred banks or e-wallet apps. And merchants are able to accept them without having to use multiple QR codes or integrate with many devices and systems. Our dream of a better life only grows stronger. And with the BSP's national QR standards for retail payments, we can continue to empower Filipinos, give them easy and better access to services and products, and ensure safe, secure, and more convenient transactions. The QRPH, one national standard for QR payments for one strong digital nation.